All right, good afternoon and welcome to the Library of Congress. It's just a little after 1 o'clock, so we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Jim Karamanis. I am the Director of IT Design and Development for the Library of Congress, and I have been managing the program that makes Congress.gov available to you for about a decade now, since the inception of the program. So I'm very lucky to work very closely with my colleagues around the institution on a daily basis on what is one of our most important programs. So on behalf of the library and all of our data partners across the legislative branch, welcome to the Library of Congress and our public forum. Now to kick things off, I'd like to introduce the library's Chief Information Officer, Judith Conklin.
Thank you. I'll lower it. Next person might have to raise it. Thank you, Jim. Good afternoon, everyone. It's my pleasure to welcome you to today's forum on Congress.gov. The Library of Congress is proud to be the home of Congress.gov. Congress directed the library with developing and maintaining the authoritative source for U.S. federal legislative information. We take this responsibility seriously, and what you see on Congress.gov is the result of a very strong relationships across multiple agencies in the legislative branch to capture, analyze, and present legislative data to Congress and the American public. As Chief Information Officer at the Library of Congress, I lead the team of IT professionals responsible for the library's technology. At the Library of Congress, technology is baked in everything we do. We build internal business systems for our own use within the library, IT systems for public use, and of course, websites that help the public explore our vast digital resources. No matter what we're working on, we rely on user feedback. Events like these are just one way we hear from the public and how we're doing and what we can do better. I'm amazed at how far we've come. We've heard the requests for structured bulk data, HTML for many years. Now that API is developed, we're done with it, and we put it in beta for a while. Now it's out of beta, and that's a technology speak for saying it's out of testing. It's fully released to the public, and I can't wait to see what you do with it. We take the continuous delivery approach to software development. Our work is never done, and this makes it possible for us to update Congress.gov every 3 weeks with new features and enhancements. We frequently hear from our congressional oversight committees about features and enhancements they would like to see. Your feedback is also a deciding factor in determining what we do next with Congress.gov. This is the most exciting thing about Congress.gov. It will never get old. We do it in a continuous delivery way. And so that's one of the things I'm most proud about in our software development program. So please take the opportunity today. If you have questions, ask them. You can also go to Congress.gov and fill out the feedback form. We'll take what you say here and on the feedback form into account as we plan the future in our backlog list of features on improvements to the site. Thank you for participating in today's forum, and we look forward to hearing from you. Back to you, Jim.
So thank you, Judith, for those inspiring words and for your leadership. And as you can all see, I've got a pretty cool boss. So now I want to introduce a colleague of mine. Andrew Weber is the product owner of Congress.gov, and he's going to be our master of ceremonies today. So come on up, Andrew.
Thank you, Jim, and welcome everybody. So excited to see so many people here, and I know there are people online, so it's very exciting for all these people who are interested in Congress.gov. I I've worked on Congress.gov for over a decade now and love working on Congress.gov. It's been a great aspect of my job. And one of the things I want to say about today, we're here to listen. We recognize with an audience this big that there are participants who are very familiar with legislative data and how Congress.gov works, and some who are here for the first time who are interested in learning more. And we hope we've created a program today that helps meet everyone's needs. And we'll start with an update on recent enhancements to Congress.gov. We'll talk through some of the top 10 things that we think are the most interesting and exciting that we've worked on over the last year. And we'll do a few minutes of Q&A after that. We also are going to hear about the bill summaries with a few minutes of Q&A. And we know that's a special interest, topic of special interest, before moving on to the Constitution Annotated, or CONAN. And we'll talk a little bit about how the Law Library is working with Congress.gov and working to modernize the century of lawmaking. And then we'll have an open discussion for more feedback and questions and just things that you're interested in. And then a little before about 2:30, we'll start our segment on the Congress.gov API, which, as Judith mentioned, is now officially in production. And members of the Congress.gov team will talk about the process and how we decided it was time to remove that beta label and how we think people will use the API. And you can also learn a little bit more about the Congressional Data Task Force that helped inspire the API as well. So at various points today, we'll be taking questions. And if you're online, feel free to ask the questions there. We'll have someone announce the questions, and then we'll answer the questions in person. So hopefully everybody can hear as well. And let's see. Oh, one thing I would need to make sure, this is why I couldn't read it, is bright red. Please note that this is a public meeting that's being recorded and video will be publicly made available. After the last several of these, there's a page on congress.gov where you can see links to the event. We also blog about announcing the event. We blog about a recap of the event on the Law Library's blogging Custodia Legis. And I believe the video gets embedded on that event page too, so you can watch the event later on if you weren't able to make it, or if there's something you didn't get in your notes you wanted to go back to. So, and with that, let me turn it over to Robert. He is from the Law Library. Some of you may know him from some of his fantastic outreach work. He also works with Barbara Bavis and does a lot of the webinars for Congress.gov and helps the public learn even more about what's going on with the website. So Robert's going to show you the top 10 enhancements since last year's public forum. Robert?
All right, thank you. Okay, so let's start with enhancements to the congressional record. So beginning with Volume 1, which was issued in December of 1873, Congress.gov provides web and mobile device friendly search and browse access to the bound edition of the congressional record. I also want to mention that due to improved access to the congressional record directly from Congress.gov, the legacy congressional record app has been retired. House and Senate congressional session dates dating from the first Congress in 1789 are available from the Past Days in Session Browse page, which you can access using a browse link at the top of the Congress.gov homepage, and then look down to the Congressional Activity heading. The Congress.gov team has improved access to bill texts and documents from the late 1700s and early 1800s. You can search the full text of available historical items dating from 1799 to 1809. You can also search the bill titles of available historical items dating from 1810 to 1873. Here I'm using the quick search form to search historical legislation text by selecting it in the Congress field. Speaking of historical legislation, you might be surprised to learn that it was not until 1817, the 14th Congress, when Congress established the consecutive bill numbering system that we take for granted today. You can read more about this on our blog in Custodia Legis in this Numbers post. We have improved access to member statements in the congressional record. If you go to a member profile page, the member activity filter allows you to use remarks in the congressional record to narrow your results to member statements. Along those same lines, when you set up an email alert on a member profile page, you can now choose to receive an email when that member's remarks are available in the congressional record. New Read Speaker audio player improvements enhance your experience listening to bill summaries, bill texts, as well as the daily edition of the congressional record. Read Speaker improvements allow you to adjust settings, enlarge text, explore help, and download an MP3 of the content. You can use the Share Save toolbar from any search results page to bookmark or email a shortened URL. Beginning with the 117th Congress, Senate floor amendment texts have much improved presentation and searchability. Prior to this enhancement, an amendment text tab would take you to the floor amendment in the congressional record, which is what you see here. Also, Senate floor amendment text, starting with the 117th Congress, can now be searched as part of the legislation collection. When you download legislation search results, you can now include the number of related bills in that download. We're excited to announce that you can now receive email alerts for treaty documents, something we wanted to add for a long time. You'll receive the alert when there's a new Senate action on the treaty document. From the treaty document page, just click Get Alerts at the top. Last September, we launched the Congress.gov API in beta, and we received lots of excellent feedback that we greatly appreciate. Later in the presentation, my colleague, Andrew Ryder, will tell you more about the Congress.gov API. And that is a quick overview of the top enhancements we wanted to mention, and I believe next we are taking questions. Yeah.
Is it possible on the list of sessions, I'm just maybe the GovHub network, by the way. Is it possible on the, thank you. Is it possible on the list of sessions to include a direct link to the record and the digest for each chamber for that day?
That's something we could certainly look into. I mean, we have to ask our developers about the feasibility of it, but certainly something we can look into.
And one other question, can you elaborate on how you're actually pulling the text for the amendments now?
Can I phone a friend on this?
Hi, I'm not sure who I'm looking at. Hi. So Senate amendment texts are published in the congressional record. So we worked with our Senate colleagues to work with the Government Publishing Office to have each individual text be an individual item that is available from GovInfo. So each individual text has a unique URL. And so then Congress.gov worked with GPO, of course, with guidance from our Senate colleagues, to directly map those URLs from GovInfo to the text tab on the Senate amendments. And we embedded those on the text tabs. And then, of course, we worked with our fabulous developers here at the library to include the texts from those tabs to now be searchable within the legislation collection when you search the legislation collection from Senate.gov, or excuse me, from Congress.gov. Yeah.
And we have a question real quick from Evan Van Orman online. What are the current plans to include bill text on Congress.gov from 1874 to 1950?
Okay, yeah, that is something we've been working on. We've been working on modernizing historic legislative data, and you'll hear more about that later in the Congress.gov public forum. We have been Jennifer Gonzalez, who works in the law library, has a great dedicated group of interns who have been working on modernizing historical legislative data so that we can ingest it into Congress.gov, and a lot of work has been done on that already.
Do you want to go to the mic?
So talking about amendments, I know a lot of this is not necessarily on you, but are there any plans or just something I've missed for integrating the amendments for the House Rules Committee, that it's also like correlated to the Congress.gov page for a bill?
We know a lot of people want that, and we are in conversation with our House clerk colleagues on how that might be a possibility.
All right, we have another question online. Thanks for holding the event. Last year, GPO announced the Senate amendments will be published On and searchable through the Congress.gov website starting in March 2023, the library began publishing these amendments. 1, with respect to the implementation, we noticed that Congress.gov will only identify the amendment number and not summarize the amendment on the page that lists all amendments. This means you don't know what the amendment is about unless you open each item, which can be many in the case of an omnibus. Would you consider publishing the submitted amendment summary before the jump? 2, can you discuss how much time may elapse between publication of these amendments in the Congressional Record and making them available online on Congress.gov?
So I believe this is a CRS question.
So, amendments are really important, and we appreciate your feedback, and we're definitely going to look at the details of what your question is. The closest thing to what you're asking for, I'm kind of excited to tell you that beginning on Monday, you will have the ability to do a data export for the texts of Senate amendments. When you go, for example, to the omnibus legislation, you go to the amendments tab, you're going to be able to do a data export and take all of the metadata for those amendments as well as the full text of those amendments, and you're going to be able to export those into a spreadsheet. Part of what your question was is asking that our last colleagues write summaries for all of those amendments. That's a great idea, but that's definitely a staffing issue, and you're going to learn more about bill summaries momentarily, and so just take all of that as you learn about bill summaries and the labor that goes into that. Did I cover all the parts? Fantastic.
So, Daniel? Just want to go to the mic.
Thank you. Thank you so much for holding this forum. This is, I love having this every year. It's such a great event. Just following up on the last question for a second, I think that there are summaries also in the congressional record from the person who introduces the amendment. So you might be able to take that summary and add it to the amendment before the jump, so that you would know what you're seeing. So I think that way you wouldn't have to do it yourself. That metadata is in Congress.gov. Oh, that's great. Yes. Yeah, because I've had the same problem that the questioner was asking, which is that if you have 800 amendments, you don't know what they are until you click through, and that can be frustrating sometimes. So I wanted to follow up. You had mentioned related legislation. There was language in the last appropriations bill to have a conversation about identifying related legislation from the same Congress and also from prior Congresses. And there was a request to set up a conversation among stakeholders and also civil society. I just wanted to ask, is that something that's on the drawing board to have that conversation? Because I know that lots of us are really interested, if the same bill is introduced in each Congress, to be able to say, oh, this bill keeps popping up again, and to be able to understand its history. So I don't know if this is the right time to ask, but I thought that I would take advantage of the opportunity. Thanks.
So we're in exploration mode for that. So we're exploring what a related bill across a Congress would look like, and how we would get that data, and how we would provide that as well. So I think we're just exploring right now to determine that we have the data, that we know how we define the data, and then we'll get into sharing it.
Sorry. So for what it's worth, we built a tool called BillMap that identifies the different types of related legislation. So when the time is right, and I know Appropriator said I think within 180 days, but there's a lot going on. We would love to chat with you as you're thinking about it before you start to build anything. because we may be able to help you as you're thinking it through. I'm sure there are others who are looking at it as well.
All right, another online question. Congress.gov from Kevin Kosar is a treasure. Thank you for all you do and for holding the meeting. 2 questions. 1, CRS reports as HTML. The library has published some CRS reports on its website for a few years, which is at crsreports.congress.gov, but only in the PDF format, not as HTML. HTML is a more versatile format, especially for mobile. Language requesting the publication for CRS reports as HTML was included in the fiscal year 2024 House Legislative Branch Appropriations Subcommittee bill reports. Will the library make sure CRS reports are made available in HTML in addition to PDF?
So, yeah, I can take that one. We have answered that report, and basically what we've told Congress is that we have the ability to publish in HTML, and if Congress directs the library to do so, that's what we'll do.
All right, and there's a part 2 to that question. Number 2, all CRS reports, CRS's full archive of reports goes back until 1970. These older reports are gems and useful to Congress and the public. Will CRS and the library publish all non-confidential CRS reports online?
So I know at this point it's a labor issue. I know the CRS, the Congressional Research Services, is working on this. But the same people that work on this are working on all the other data enhancements that happen on Congress.gov. So I know it's part of their workload. I don't have in front of me a timeline for making those available, but I know the plan is to keep going backwards in time as the resources allow.
Any other questions? Are there any more online? From Julio Serran, with respect to alerts, have you considered allowing similar alerts to be merged into one daily email? For example, I have active alerts on a number of members and get an email for each instead of one compiled email notification for all members I'm following.
Like a digest?
So we do have a digest for, is it the Save Search email alerts? So if you have several of those subscribed, you can get it as one daily alert with everything in there. But I don't think we have that for members. So we might need to take this down and go back and look at the level of effort for that. So thank you for this feedback. Next is from Robert McClure. Good morning. Congress.gov is an outstanding source of legislation. These are great comments. Just keep them coming. Business school would find trend in this terrific source. Civics is also a great lesson to build our future society. Can more public awareness be made to colleges and in primary and secondary education? Thank you. We do work, there's an ed outreach and education outreach section of the Library of Congress, and when we do releases, which are every 3 weeks that Judith mentioned, we also share the blog post that goes up with each of the announcements with people in the education outreach. We try to reach those audiences as well, but if there are specifically some additional ways that you think we could reach out to colleges and universities, we'd be also interested in hearing those as well. Next up is a question from Melissa Wood. Could you provide an update on Senate Video Task Force? For context of what I'm referring to, last year the Secretary of Senate announced the creation of a video task force composed of many legislative branch stakeholders to address the archiving and publication of congressional video, including that of committees and subcommittees. Does the office have any updates regarding connecting video of congressional proceedings with information about those proceedings published on Congress.gov?
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Aaron Shapiro. I'm with the Office of the Secretary of the Senate. Yes, I'm proud to announce after this recess that we started to deliver to the Library of Congress URLs for committee hearings. So now, thank you. I'd really like to commend the Office of the Daily Digest, who is doing the hard work of adding this information to existing data streams. Now that this information is being delivered to the Library of Congress, we're eager to work with their developers and their development cycle to get this integrated onto committee pages in the same way that House hearings have been for several years. The task force continues to do its work with Library of Congress and NARA to advance the ways that we're transmitting both floor proceedings and committee hearings for greater access and preservation. We're getting close to finalizing a report, which we expect to finish in the next couple months, which will lead to the further integration of these videos and access as well as preservation.
Thank you, Aaron. We're very excited for that feed, and we're looking forward to incorporating the committee hearing videos into Congress.gov from the Senate.
Thank you.
Next up is Aubrey Wilson. In the fiscal year 2024 Senate Legislative Branch Appropriations Subcommittee Bill Report, the committee directed the library to provide a detailed report within 45 days of issuance of this report on various options for providing appropriations data for public access, the challenges to doing so in a consistent manner, and the resources that would be required to implement the requirement. This report was due on August 27, 2023. The intention of this report was to provide a spreadsheet for each line item in an appropriations bill. Can the library provide a summary of its findings in this report? Are there any next steps?
We submitted the report to our appropriations colleagues, and we look forward to further direction from them.
Thanks, Kimberly. Any other questions from the audience? And no questions online? Okay. Thank you. And next up is Barbara Perkins. Thanks so much, Robert. I'm very pleased to invite Barbara Perkins up, who's going to talk about bill summaries, and she's also from CRS. So when you're looking at that summaries tab on Congress.gov, you can thank her and her team.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Barbara Perkins. I'm the head of the Legislative Analysis and Services section. I'm excited to have the opportunity to talk about the work we are doing for Congress.gov. Next slide. Or who's doing the slides? Where am I looking? Am I supposed to be doing that as well? I'm multitasking. I can do it. Am I just pushing the button here? Which one? Use this? Okay. So first, I plan to cover who we are, what bill summaries are, how they are created, and how we handle the volume of bills. Then I will have some time for questions. First, I'm going to talk about who we are. The Congressional Research Service is a part of the Library of Congress that provides nonpartisan and objective research to Congress. Our section is responsible for a variety of the legislative information that appears on Congress.gov. I've highlighted here a Congress.gov bill page so you can get a sense of the sort of information we contribute. For the highlighted tabs, we contribute either some information or all of the information. For instance, on the Action tab, we would support the congressional record links from the Action. Here is a close-up of the specific information we provide. We add bill relationships when a bill is textually similar to another bill in the same Congress. We add policy areas to bills so that you can filter your search by the subject area. Finally, for more advanced searching, we assign legislative subjects to bills so you can hone in on specific issues. All of this work is done by a team of legislative analysts, legislative specialists, and legislative research assistants. So now I'm going to talk about what bill summaries are. In 1935, Congress realized that they needed a way to keep track of legislation introduced in the House and Senate. They tasked what was then the Legislative Reference Service with creating a digest of bills introduced in Congress. This work has continued uninterrupted since that time. The result is over 400,000 summaries of legislation available on Congress.gov dating back to 1973. Efforts are ongoing to include older summaries. Today, we operate under a mandate found in the U.S. Code to publish summaries for legislation. While the mandate is not specific on how we do this, we have established standards for what these summaries should be. Bill summaries are analytical products that explain precisely how a bill would change existing law. As part of CRS, our summaries have to be authoritative, nonpartisan, and objective. Since legislation is written by lawyers for lawyers, legislative analysts strive to bridge the gap between the lawyer and the layperson by making legislation accessible and understandable. Congress has also expressed their preference for shorter products, so we keep our summaries brief and concise. We also have to balance making our summaries descriptive and precise while also making them clear and readable. Next, I'm going to talk about how bill summaries are created. First, I'll walk you through a roadmap from the start of the legislative process to publication on congress.gov. Then I will discuss a particular bill. The first step in creating a summary is action by Congress, by either introducing a measure or taking action on it. When that happens, we create an assignment that tells us a summary needs to be published. What's important to note is that we then take no further action until GPO publishes official bill text. When that happens, a research assistant will review the legislation and ensure it is assigned to the correct internal subject area. The assignment will then be routed to the legislative analysts assigned to that subject area. Once the analyst takes up the bill, they will start with the research. This could be as simple as determining that there is a similar bill, and they can reuse that summary. In that case, they only need to determine that the underlying law hasn't changed in a way that would change their analysis. On the other side of the spectrum, an analyst may have to do considerable research. Currently, there are 13 analysts writing bill summaries. As a result, the subject areas that an analyst may be assigned are vast. For example, a single legislative analyst writes bill summaries for all legislation in the areas of higher education, elementary and secondary education, election law, Native Americans, and foreign trade. It is virtually impossible for an analyst to have extensive and expert knowledge on every issue in such vast and varied subject areas, so they have to be experts at research of public policy and the law. They have to quickly understand the context of legislation sufficient to perform an analysis of it. After the analyst finishes research, they analyze the bill. This is where they get into the specifics of what the bill text is changing, the current law, and what the legal implication might be of those changes. Legislative analysis requires an understanding of not only the bill text, the U.S. Code and statutes, but also other resources such as regulations, executive orders, and Supreme Court cases. The analyst also has to understand federal programs, interactions of law, delegations of authority, and the implementation of law and programs. All that is necessary to determine what is happening with the bill, why it is happening, and the problem Congress is trying to solve. Sometimes it's as simple, maybe the bill says that the Secretary of HHS, but the analyst knows that authority related to prescription drugs has been delegated to the Food and Drug Administration. The analyst will use the FDA to be more precise as to who the acting officials are. Sometimes it's not so simple. If a bill changes the definition, the analyst needs to determine what that means for the law in any provision of law that uses that definition. The analysis required is varied, so analysts really have to master their statutory interpretation to finish this step. The analyst takes all this information and has to write a clear and concise summary to cover the major points of the bill. Summaries for bills at the introduced stage are generally 250 words or fewer. We write additional summaries as measure moves through the legislative process, and those summaries may be longer. Sometimes a summary may end up as a section-by-section analysis, especially when the bill becomes law. The analyst must also include context and background necessary for readers to understand the bill. This may vary by bill or subject. To reflect our audience, a bill that applies to veterans will be written differently than a bill about Medicare's funding of graduate medical education. After the analyst has written the summary, they send it on for review by a senior analyst. We currently have 3 senior analysts. They may have some assigned subject areas where they are the primary analyst, but their main responsibilities are to review summaries for accuracy, completeness, clarity, and tone. When the senior analyst is finished, they will publish the summary and it will appear on congress.gov in just a few minutes. Here is a bill from congress.gov for just a 1-page bill, which is as short as it gets. As you can see from the text, bills are drafted in a way that provides not much context. We know that this bill is amending the ALS Disability Insurance Access Act, but a bill text will not actually show us the portion of law that's being amended. We can see from subsection A that the bill is replacing a group of words with a different group of words, but the bill itself provides little context for those words. So providing context is a big part of what we try to do for the reader with CRS bill summaries. Essentially, what the analyst will do first here is to get the act that is being amended, mark it up to show the deletions and additions made by the bill in order to understand those changes and be able to explain them to the reader. So let's see what the analyst came up with for this bill. Can you see that? As you can see, they summed up the bill very succinctly in the first sentence. Generally, we strive to ensure the topic sentence provides coverage of the main topic or scope of the bill so users can quickly determine if this is an area they are interested in. We also strive to work in a reverse pyramid order where the gist is up front and it gets more detailed as we move through the summary. So in this case, the analyst followed the first sentence up with a bit of helpful background information. And then the second paragraph really gets into the changes to current law, some relevant legislative history, and spells out the problem that the bill is trying to solve. Now, this is, of course, a short bill, but you can get a sense for how the summary, by providing that context and background, is able to illuminate the bill for the reader. And that's what we try to do for all bills, whether they're very short ones like this one, or very long ones such as the National Defense Authorization Act, which can be thousands of pages long. Next is how we handle the volume of bills. Here's an illustration of the total number of summaries that shows how the total number of summaries has grown over the last 4 Congresses. And this Congress, the numbers project to be even higher with over 10,000 summaries needed so far. As a result, we prioritize certain summaries to serve Congress. First, we expedite summaries for legislation we know is likely to receive for floor consideration in the House or Senate. We also expedite summaries for legislation getting a lot of views on congress.gov. And finally, we expedite summaries for legislation when we are informed by Congress that it would be helpful for their work if we do so. Beyond that, within the current Congress, we try to work in a general first in, first out order. When a Congress ends, we often will write very brief summaries, even maybe just 1 sentence, so that we can focus on the current Congress. So that's all I have. I hope this has been helpful to you. And
Thank you so much, Barbara.
okay.
We now wanted to check. I learned a lot from your presentation,
Okay.
too. It was great. Are there any questions? There's one online. All right. Next question from Zach Graves. Given bandwidth constraints, can you discuss any efforts to leverage and test LLMs like ChatGPT or Claude for writing bill summaries?
Yeah, we are exploring machine learning models as a way to build efficiency in producing summaries.
Great. Next question.
Quick question, how do your summaries compare both in process and content to the summaries that CBO generates? And I don't think CBO does them for every bill like you do, but I was curious as to when there is overlap there, how that compares.
I'm not sure I can answer that question. Do you know, Kimberly?
Are you referring to CBO cost estimates?
Yes.
Okay, so the cost estimate is really, about the impact that implementing the legislation would have on the federal budget. And there's really not much overlap at all between that and the summary of the text of the bill. Does that make sense?
Well, she did refer to like your analysts and CRS look at like the context and the interactions and all that stuff. So there's a little bit of a similarity. It's not that different between like when you're spending and you're asking how's that going to affect the whole federal budget. It's impacted by some of those other things too, I would think.
I will say that our summaries don't talk about impacts as far as money and what's going to happen, policy impacts. We only talk about the legal impacts. So, this is now prohibited. This wasn't prohibited before, but what are the implications of that prohibition is not something we would cover in our summaries, but it is definitely something CBO has to cover to figure out the costs.
Daniel?
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. It was really interesting. Do you have access to like any of the tools used, for example, the House is developing the comparative print project that allows you to see how the legislative text would change the underlying law? Or do you chat with Ledge Council at all, since they have to go through the process of turning the ideas into law and you're trying to turn the law back into the ideas? I don't know if like there's conversations that are happening there as well. I'd be interested.
So two things. One, we do have access to the House comparative print tool, and we use it when we can. The second, the Ledge Councils have a counselor, an attorney-client relationship with the members, so they're not really free to discuss those discussions. So that relationship is completely separate, and so we wait and we just sort of deconstruct what they constructed.
Another question from the back.
Do you have a mechanism for assessing value to the user of the summaries?
I would say no. I would.
And the question was, do you have a mechanism for assessing the value of the summaries to the users?
Yeah, I would think that we do not.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Except for the feedback that we generally receive.
Any other questions? Oh, okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving right along, Megan Troughton from CRS is here with an update on Conan, the Constitution Annotated. Thank you.
Okay. Hi, and good afternoon. Thank you. It's hard to believe. There we go. It's hard to believe that it's been almost 4 years since the library launched the Constitution Annotated website, constitution.congress.gov. Over the past year, the number of website visits and page views has continued to grow. Before the launch of the constitution.congress.gov, 2018 saw 20,720 visits and 23,213 page views. By comparison, 2022 saw 7,821,008 visits and 16,173,435 page views. Given current trends, we expect these numbers will continue to increase during 2023. During the past year, we have continued to work on making the website more accessible to users. This past year, we reorganized and subdivided content that has been created for the hardbound version of the Constitution Annotated to make it easier for users to navigate and read in an online format. In addition to making the essays more granular and essay headings more descriptive, we added short overview essays to essay groups and subgroups to explain overarching concepts to users. We streamlined and improved website breadcrumbs so that readers can easily understand how each essay relates to the Constitution's article, amendment, sections, and clause hierarchies. We added links for essay groups and subgroups so that readers can quickly grasp how constitutional concepts relate to each other within the groups and subgroups. For example, by clicking on the state taxation link, which we have highlighted here, you are taken to the Browse page, and it highlights the essays and the subgroups, enabling readers to see related issues in addition to where the essay falls in the Constitution's hierarchy. To assist users, we also created a Library of Congress guide to the Constitution Annotated website. This LibGuide assists researchers in learning about the breadth of information that is available on CONAN. We have also improved the back end of our website and workflow in order to update the website more quickly. During the past Supreme Court term, these improvements enabled us to update the website within a few hours of the Supreme Court releasing a decision. Looking forward to the upcoming year, we expect additional website improvements to enable us to reduce this time even further. Thank you.
Thank you for the update, Megan. Up next, we're going to hear a pre-recorded message from Jennifer Gonzalez, who is in Florida. She is going to talk about, in this video, about modernizing Century of Lawmaking and the Law Library's relationship with law.gov and congress.gov.
Hello, I'm Jennifer Gonzalez, Senior Legal Information Specialist with the Law Library of Congress. The Law Library of Congress has played an integral role in the development of congress.gov and continues to collaborate on projects, creating a partnership of complementary trainings, displays, and collections. The Law Library of Congress website, or law.gov, links to congress.gov from the homepage. The section labeled Researcher Resources links to congress.gov as well as research guides for legal research. These research guides draw heavily on congress.gov. For instance, there is a research guide on compiling a federal legislative history and another on congressional committee calendars. The Guide to Law Online is also a great starting place for U.S. federal, state, or foreign legal research. The Law Library's Legal Research Institute offers webinars on various U.S. and foreign law issues, including a bi-monthly congress.gov webinar. But the Law Library digital collections are where this partnership really stands out. For example, the Statutes at Large is currently available in full on the Law Library's website. With the help of graduate students, we are reviewing the data to put these statutes on the congress.gov website so that the full run of statutes will appear in one place. The Law Library of Congress will still hold the full volumes of historical statutes for those that prefer that full volume view, and we continue to add the navigation aids to discover statutes in different ways. Congress.gov will have the laws separated to have a more seamless browse and search experience, much like the contemporary bills. As discussed in previous years, the website and server for A Century of Lawmaking is no longer being supported. This website will be retired by the end of this year. The Law Library and Congress.gov teams have divided the content to find the most appropriate place for each collection to reside. The main page and all top-level information have already moved to a Law Library collection. Many of the items have also been moved to the Law Library's website. The remaining items will be added to the Congress.gov website in the coming months. This new display has many changes, but will increase accessibility, discoverability, and most importantly, stability. The U.S. Serial Set is a large digitization project that will augment the legislative information available on congress.gov. This massive collection is nearing the end of scanning, with over 15,000 volumes and around 12 million pages. The new scans are helping to enhance some of the Century of Lawmaking material that will appear on congress.gov by offering higher quality digital scans and more functionality. The collection will be displayed on the Law Library's and Government Publishing Office's websites to increase visibility and findability over the next several years. The Law Library also collaborates with congress.gov by hosting supplemental and complementary material to the legislative information. For instance, we host the Code of Federal Regulations and the Federal Register. These historical collections both begin in 1938 and continue through 1986 and 1993, respectively, when they can be found on other government websites. Additionally, the Law Library hosts judicial branch material, including the U.S. reports from 1754 through 2012 and continuing on. And we have embarked on an even bigger project to digitize the many thousands of items in our Supreme Court Records and Briefs collection. Many of these items are fragile and poor condition, so this is a multi-year project for the digitization as well as creating an organized display. The Law Library also hosts historical and foreign legal collections to supplement legal research in Congress.gov. This includes the U.S. treaties, the U.S. Code, Native American Constitution and legal materials, our rare collections, and our foreign legal gazettes collection are just some examples. Additionally, the Law Library has digitized our historical legal reports back to the 1940s and continues to publish current reports for the public. As also mentioned in previous years, so much of this data is not able to be automated, or if it is, there is need for a human element to review the data before posting on Congress.gov. The Law Library works with the Congress.gov team to plan projects and place graduate students in those projects that will benefit us and their studies. These students, mostly in Masters of Library and Information Science programs, use these internships for practical job skills and real-world metadata experience. We are grateful for their work and honored to be part of their academic journey. Finally, the Law Library supports Congress.gov through our blog, In Custodia Legis, and by answering legal research questions for law librarians through the Ask a Librarian service. Both are linked to from the Law Library's homepage and the Congress.gov homepage, cementing that partnership. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Jennifer and Megan. Now we've come to the time we're going to have an open discussion, so if you have more questions, please submit them online or feel free to stand up and go to the microphone. I have been fascinated by the work that the remote interns have done. One of the things that they contributed to on Congress.gov is, as we've incorporated Century of Lawmaking, the legislation for the 6th through the 11th Congress, they went back and transcribed all of that. So now when you do a search on Congress.gov for that early material, you're able to find and retrieve that material much easier than what it would have been back on the old Century of Lawmaking website. So we have a great partnership where we work with them to try and do different things like this to enhance the website. And it also has been a new place where we were able to recruit some people to come and work with us after that program, including Andrew Ryder, who will be up in a few minutes. And David was one of the other people who used to be one of the remote interns. So it's been great to see that program work and to have some new colleagues as a result of it. This question?
Great, thank you, that looks good. I don't know if this is the right time to ask this question or not, because I might be confusing this with the bound edition, and I'm not sure if that's the same thing as this or not. But one thing I've noticed about the bound edition PDFs is that they're very large and have a lot of pages, and especially since they're graphics, when you have a 50 megabyte file, it's hard for a browser to even open it. So I was wondering if we could possibly make those chunks are smaller or have another smaller option available. And then the second question I had was, and it sounds like you just kind of addressed this, but in terms of scanning content and then also making it searchable, is there a plan to also have a text version, or is it just going to be PDFs with images for now? Thank you.
So for the first question, the bound just is, it's enormous. And with our work with GPO, that's how kind of we have it spliced right now. It would be nice if it was at a smaller, more granular level, but that's, we use GPO as our data source for that. What do you want to add?
But we have used the Law Library's Army intern to break out the daily digests for every day, which I highly recommend. And so next time you're using the bound edition of the Congressional Record, look out for the sections of the Daily Digest, and we have broken those out day by day, and that's a really, really nice summary for each day, and that's a good start. And thank you so much for expressing your interest in breaking the bound editions up into pieces, because we do like to hear how do people need to use these materials. So thank you for that.
And as far as part two of your question, it is ideal if we have the text and can display that, but when things just get scanned, sometimes that scan, we get the OCR text and we can use that. It's one of the reasons why for the Center of Lawmaking project, we had the interns go back and transcribe, because then we've also added that as a text tab, a text view for those early materials, so you can see the text that way. Because it is, it's a little more web-friendly, mobile-friendly for people going back and doing research on that. So that's normally the goal for us to also have text, but it's not always part of what the projects that we are downstream from did or addressed. And I have one housekeeping measure for people who are online. Rather than put up your hand, if you could type the question into the chat, and then I'll read the question off. And next question in person.
Thank you, Lorelei Kelly, Georgetown. So floor scheduling information on congress.gov, this is the question I'm asking, is regarding the FY 2023 Senate Legislative Branch Committee report recommends the library and its partners consider enhancing congress.gov to incorporate information about floor scheduling information. This would empower congress.gov users to know what is scheduled on the House or Senate floor for the week. Where is the library on any efforts to make floor proceeding information available on its website? Thank you.
Thank you. Great question. We are really anticipating working with our data partners on providing data sources so that congress.gov can show what the data is.
Do you have any online questions? No? Okay, no questions so far online. Any other in-person questions? Yes.
I would just add a quick follow-up to my two questions, and that is that if you make the PDF smaller, that actually helps with the OCR thing. Because like even things like Apple devices, like iPads and phones, can actually do the OCR for users. It's just hard when the files are so big.
Yeah. Thank you for the suggestion. Yeah. Any other questions or comments during our open discussion? Nothing else online either? All right. If there's nothing else, I think we can then move to the next part. This is the big reveal that has been kind of alluded to earlier about the Congress.gov API, and Andrew Ryder will now share more about the process, what we've done over the last year, and maybe a brief mention of the Congressional Data Task Force. Thanks, Andrew.
Hi, everyone. My name is Andrew Ryder, and I'm a legislative data specialist at the Library of Congress. So since the API launched last year on September 6th, we have really benefited from all of the feedback from our users and also from the Congressional Data Task Force. We launched, like I said, last year with the beta label, and today we are really thrilled to share that we are removing that beta label. Since October to December 2022, when we had 31.4 million requests, we have grown the number of requests to 96.5 million, which is pretty impressive. And then from April to June 2023, we had 791 unique users, which was up from 459 users in the last quarter of 2022. And then since we have been working on this past year, we have added new endpoints for both the bound congressional record and the daily congressional record. We launched those in August 2023, and we have been constantly receiving feedback from users and our data partners on enhancing existing endpoints. So the work has been there, and we have really appreciated all of that feedback and also the work of our developers. I thought that we could talk a little bit, and I could show everyone a little bit of our website and use one of our newer endpoints as an example. So this example will use the daily congressional record, and we will sort by both the volume number and the issue number. Something to note about our website is that we have several different endpoints, all with different parameters. And you can authorize this with your API key, which you can sign up on the api.congress.gov website. So to run one of these queries with the different parameters provided, we have provided a lot of information for our users who might be searching or looking for some guidance on how to search or create a request in the API. And you can do so by hitting this try it out button, which is available under each endpoint. And it will pull up and populate these different parameters that we use for each particular search. So these are tailored to the different endpoints. And you will see here that there are some optional ones like the format, which our default format is going to be XML, but we can also change that to JSON. You can see the offset, which is specifying a starting record, the limit, which is the number of records that you can return. Our maximum is currently 250. And then for this particular example, we have 2 required parameters, which are obviously the volume number and issue number. You can't search and make a request without these. So you can just input those numbers in and hit execute, and it will create a URL that you can put into your browser and get the information. It will also show you if it was successful. If it's a code 200, it was successful, which ours was. And it will show you all of the information that that particular request returned. And so, as you can see, it's pretty extensive. One thing that I like about this is that I think that being able to put this into the browser is much more useful for users since you can search and see everything a little bit more clearly. So I will do that now. And as you can see here, we returned issue number 153 for the 166th volume. This was in the 116th Congress, and it was in session number 2. We provide the URL for the search here, and then the update date for when this entity was last updated, which was in September of 2020. One of the things that I really like about this particular endpoint is that we provide refer URLs to congress.gov so that you can see each particular section. So for example, here we have the PDF and formatted text versions. Our developers worked really hard, I think, to get everything in there, like these refer URLs, so that users could see where this is located directly on congress.gov. Additionally, after that entire issue, we have the sections. We break it down by section with the start and end pages, and then the name of each section. So for example, the Daily Digest. We have then again more refer URLs to each section. So if you're looking for the Daily Digest, you can put that, copy and paste that link and go there. And then we have the other sections, extension of remarks, House section, the Senate section, and then at the very bottom we have this articles count. And something I like here that we did with the Daily Congressional Record was that we created an endpoint that specifically returned information for a particular volume and issue number of the Congressional Record by articles. So you can search and return just the articles, and it will provide all of that information for a particular Congressional Record. And then, of course, at the bottom, it just nicely summarizes the request again, and you're able to see what you searched for. Andrew, how do I get back into the... Thank you. It wasn't working. Oh, there you go. Thank you. So I just wanted to end this presentation with some of our resources that we have. Congress.gov maintains a GitHub repository with all of our information related to the API. This includes our user guides and documentation for each endpoint. So every endpoint is going to have all of the elements and their definitions and how you can possibly, what you can possibly see when you return information for a particular endpoint. We have a change log, which I think might be one of our most important things, because you can see all of the changes that we have made in the past and also all the changes that are upcoming in different sprints or 3-week development cycles that we use. We take user feedback very seriously. So our users have the ability to create an issue. Even if what you're saying is not an issue, we still want to hear, so if there's a research question or an idea for an enhancement, we really want you to submit those. And oftentimes what was reported as an issue becomes something that's in our change log. So we really encourage folks to make a GitHub account, write, provide feedback, provide a thought, report a bug. We will look at it. We try to meet very frequently and discuss these things. And then lastly, we have the Python and Java sample client code for our users who are looking to build their own code base. That's also very relevant for our users. And that is all I have about the API, and I think it's question time.
Sorry, I'm not trying to be the star of the show here, but I have several questions. API endpoints for action codes is one of the questions I had. I didn't know until recently that the numbers that I've seen in the URLs on congress.gov for searches are actually, I think maybe even enshrined in law as far as the whole, every step of the legislative process and where things happen. And so I was wondering if there is either anything along the lines of action codes in the API or any hints of that or direction of that. I think it would be very helpful, especially along the lines of like pulling numbers, to be able to pull like per day, per action code, a number of all the different actions. That would, even starting there, I think would be very helpful. As of right now, if you look at the action page on congress.gov, there's only like 3 different action codes that generate numbers, even though you have like an entire page of action codes that have lots of different actions. So that was the first question I had about the API. The second was when you had the maximum of 250, and this ties in with another question I had as far as, is this just for pulling the URLs of content or the actual content of the article itself? Because sometimes the Senate and even the House can have even more than 500 articles in a day, which tends to break even congress.gov right now. But I was wondering if the API maybe could possibly reach up towards 1,000, where it wouldn't run into some of those limits when Congress, especially as we know, has these really busy days.
Can I answer that one real quick?
Sure.
So we do have a ticket where we're trying to load test, expanding that number from 250 to a little bit higher. So hopefully, and we kind of hope we would be able to announce it today, that we've increased that number, but hopefully soon we'll be able to increase that number for users.
Okay. This is more of a congress.gov question in particular, but when you currently search for an action code, unless you look specifically at a bill and it was the bill's most recent action, it's almost impossible to tell what you actually searched for unless you know what the action codes are, which I try and on my site provide links to people for specific action codes like committee action, past committee, had a hearing, had a markup, that kind of stuff. And if you search for that, if that was the most recent thing, great, but then if something else happened to the bill later, the search is kind of confusing. And so I'm wondering if congress.gov could add something to search results where if somebody specifically used an action code to search for something, could it also add near the top of the results a quick explanation of what that action code actually means? That was one question that I had. And then the last one, ties into what I said a minute ago about, is this API right now currently only pulling URLs of article entries, or is there a way to use the API to actually pull full-on content from, say, the congressional record?
So currently it's only pulling the URLs.
Okay. Are there plans to do article content too?
I think that we're always looking and exploring the feasibility of doing things just based on what our developers assess with the situation. So if someone reports or suggests an enhancement, I think that we're always open to reviewing it and seeing the feasibility.
Great. And then actually one last thing I would throw in on that too, and this could be for the API or even just congress.gov itself. There is currently, like I came up with a way to do it now, but like neither GPO nor congress.gov actually has a way to have a single page that has the entire section of content in text form. You can do it in PDF, you can look at the different individual articles, but nobody yet has, I've done it, but neither GPO nor congress.gov has a way to have an entire text single page of the entire content for a day for a section. So if that could be another option explored, that would be helpful too.
Thank you for the feedback. Any other questions on the API right now? Any online? No? All right. Thanks, Andrew. One thing I want to mention is Andrew has a blog post coming out on Monday about the API and officially removing the beta label, so there's a little bit more in that if you're interested in subscribing to In Custodia Legis, or with each of our releases, and as part of our release, is we also have a notifications, congress.gov notifications alert that you can subscribe to, and it'll talk you through, list the main public-facing enhancements that we did over that release. We do all kinds of work on congress.gov. Some of it's behind the scenes. We upgraded some stuff that took a couple years that no one ever sees. Those aren't the things that we put on that enhancements page or on the API page, but there's that page is, and congress.gov notifications is very specifically for things that you might actually want to learn about what's changing and what's new and what the latest enhancement is to the website. And if you were excited enough to take time out of your day to come here, you might be excited enough to sign up for that email alert too. Up next is our next and final open discussion. We've done our major presentations, and so we continue to want to hear from you. Let me know, and all of us know, what are the questions you have, other thoughts that you have, if there's anything else coming in from online. Go ahead, Daniel.
I figured this was the better way to do it, right? So 2 questions. One has to do with, there was a prior discussion around integrating, so GPO had built, GAO had built, I don't know how to explain it. They were trying to, my brain's not working today. They were identifying GAO reports that are related to ongoing legislation. And they had done this for prior Congresses, but doing it for the current Congress didn't work because all their scrapers broke. And you guys were having a conversation about making use of the API that you guys have, just revealed is now no longer in beta, which is great. I just was curious how that's progressing, because it would be really wonderful to be able to connect relevant GAO reports to upcoming proceedings.
We have met with our GAO colleagues, and we're really excited to work with them. We have a dialogue that's open, and we're exploring quite a few things.
Okay. So I had a second question as well.
Okay.
So sometimes there are delays between information that's being considered in either chamber and when it becomes available on the Library of Congress's website. This is for a number of reasons that we've discussed in the past. I'm wondering if if you're tracking the delay. So like, if there's a.
So if we're calculating how long it is we're not getting stuff that we don't know we're going to get?
Yes. So for example, there's a bill, right? It's in the congressional record. It's been passed by the chamber, which often happens, but it's not available on the Library of Congress website. And sometimes it's not available for a day. Sometimes it's not available for longer. Obviously, there's gaps with respect to summaries, which is an issue that's been discussed. It's useful just to have a sense of like, is this? I mean, there's no way you can answer the question of like, is this coming soon? But you might be able to answer the question of like, how widespread a problem is this? And it's not a library problem, but it's a missing information problem, and it may just be useful to say we're waiting for these following things to be received, and then we'll process it. Anyway, so. I was thinking like a dashboard almost. So, as a thought.
I think as a thought, it makes sense. And I completely understand where you're coming from. But I think from a putting it together perspective, it's hard to have a concrete list of what we know we don't know yet. And so that's where it gets, like, because we're waiting for it from like the official text from GPO. And we would have to do work to kind of pull all of this together that this is what we're waiting for. And then, so it's something we can continue to think about and see if maybe there's more of a structured data source that we can get that says this is what's coming down the road.
Yeah, and there might be, so for summaries it'd be easier, right? Because you've got the stub when you've got the bill number, but you don't have the bill text. So you can't, if the bill text hasn't been officially produced by GPO, then you can't start the summary writing process and all what we discussed. But you do know that there's a gap because you've got the bill number.
If we have the bill on congress.gov without the summary. Yeah,
right, without anything else. So like there may be other types of things like that, including that you could keep track of, we have coming soon the following text of these 40 bills that we're just waiting for from GPO or something like that.
Well, and one thing, once we start to know, we create like the shell pages of the bills, and then we'll add the text as soon as we get it. So one thing that's great for users is if you see that and there's a bill that you're interested in, is go ahead and click Get Alerts, and then make sure you select text and summary in that scenario. So that way you can then get the email alert that, okay, now Congress.gov has this new text, and maybe the next version of the text as well as the summary, maybe the next version of the summary. So if you would go into that specific bill, that's one way to kind of keep track.
Yeah, I mean, and that's helpful. And just, this also ties into a prior conversation, which was around summaries and CBO reports. So CBO reports aren't just like costs, but they also have a summary of the legislation. And at times, CBO will have a summary of legislation prior to when Congress.gov will have a summary of that same legislation. And there may be ways of bootstrapping off of that as well.
So one thing also with our alerts, I believe you can also select when you're following a bill, the CBO updates. So then you'll get notified that we have that you can then click over to CBO's website to read.
Yes.
So then you can see that maybe in the timely fashion as well.
Yeah, no, that's right.
So, other questions?
I had three other topics that I don't think we've covered yet. One would be excerpting long pages. I know for the most part, Congress.gov just basically takes what it gets from GPO, and I know GPO, I'm not sure if it's them or if the reporters of congressional debate have started to, like, especially in the Senate, breaking out some of those longer pages more, but I'm wondering if there's a way to also have a way to excerpt content. Like, for instance, I know that we live in this dual world between video of congressional proceedings and then the printed form of congressional proceedings. And if you think about C-SPAN, you know, they have like their full hours and hours of Senate floor meetings, and then you can go through and you can take like a clip from like this minute to this minute or this second to this second. Would there be a way to do like some kind of line numbering or something else with Congress.gov to be able to go through and excerpt some of those long pages, especially in the Senate, where the two main points where I can think of this would be useful is in the Senate, you can have a senator come and talk about anything they want at any time, even if they're officially debating some nomination or bill or whatever. And then in the House, you also have like the really long general debates, and sometimes you want to just zero in on like a particular speech or exchange between a few members. So I would like to put the feedback out there that having a native way to do that, like I'm working on developing my own, and I've done it limited form with line numbers, and I can also think of several ways of doing it, like by timestamps in the House, or actually by page numbers, or there's a variety of different ways you could do it. But I think that would be something that would be useful. Second one I had was congressional meeting transcripts. And this is more of like a bulk data task force kind of thing, where I've mentioned it and talked about it in there, and I've gotten much clearer on my question, which is, when both when both chambers of Congress are in session, we have 100 meetings a week. And yet the transcripts are a trickle compared to that. Like you get 100 a year as far as transcripts. And so I'm wondering why there's this huge disconnect. And is there a way, like I know with the congressional record, you have a daily edition versus a bound edition. And it seems like for committee transcripts, we're only dealing with waiting for the permanent bound edition whenever that may happen. And it's usually like a year later. And so I'm wondering, is there a way where we can get like more of a, call it a rush transcript like the media does or whatever, in terms of getting more active transcripts sooner? Because I think that number contrast really makes the point that, in my view, this issue is nowhere near fixed as far as the committee transcripts is concerned. And then lastly, as Daniel often says at the beginning of every one of his remarks, thank you very much for this meeting, and it's always a pleasure. And it would be nice if there was more way to provide feedback, because at this point, the form that you have, like I know you say it's on every page, but it only takes one response. You can only submit it once, and then it doesn't take any more feedback, and it asks a whole bunch of questions. And so if there could be a way to like provide more feedback on an ongoing basis, that would also be helpful. I've tried Twitter before, but that's, or X,
so we do
whatever you
normally
wanna
see
call it.
the tweets and try to respond to those. The other place is like on the blog posts that we're mentioning that get published every 3 weeks.
I've discovered that's useful and helpful and gives feedback, so thank you for
Putting
that
some
too.
of the feedback on there, the comments. And then one thing I want to mention that we do with all of this feedback, so we take it from all of the different sources, the feedback form, and I didn't realize you could submit it once and then you can't do it again. Might try and talk to our person who works on the surveys to check and see if there might be a way we can adjust that. Is we have what we call affectionately the feedback repository, where on the Congress.gov team aggregates feedback that you might send, that Daniel might send, that we might get via Twitter or on a comment on a blog post, also to the survey form. And we do, like lots of people do submit the survey. We get like dozens and dozens, I think, each week that we then sort through and read through and then take the feedback from that and then put it into the repository. We know there are things that certain people want that in the feedback repository, things then have like one item that then has the follow-up comments that other people have made. So it really helps us prioritize, because all of a sudden we're like, oh, there's 12 people all of a sudden who are talking about this new issue. We need to make sure we address this right away. So the feedback does get aggregated and then used for all of our development, and that's part of why we do quick 3-week sprints so we can find out what's next. The thing that Kimberly mentioned earlier today for the release on Monday, where you can go to the amendments tab and now download things, that's one of our feedback-inspired items that we've been working on, as are almost all of the things that Robert mentioned as well. So I'll try and look at the feedback form to make sure that people can do it more than once, but also recognize there are a few other places to do surveys that will get to the Congress.gov team as well.
Great, thank you. And then one other thought I had, even as you were talking, was we heard earlier from the Senate Secretary's office about some work they're doing with committee hearings, and I don't know if that would come from, like would that be reported in your enhancements list, or is there a way to get more of a coherent, single place repository for everybody's development, not just
The fact that we're
LOC?
starting to get the feed probably won't go into our enhancements list, but once it goes into Congress.gov and is on the committee profile pages, so when we have the committee announcement pages, so when there's a new committee meeting, there'll be a video place for the video, then we'll announce like there's now accessible the Senate videos where you can watch whenever the time for the committee hearings are to start. So that's where it'll be announced. And then things like this that we continue to add to the site now that the API is out and live, we'll continue to develop for the API. So we'll put that URL for the video for the Senate in the API for the Senate committee meeting announcements. So we'll try and pull it all together.
Thank you.
No more online questions? Any more comments or thoughts from people in the audience?
Great, thank you, Andrew. I also wanted to say thank you to all of our colleagues at the Congressional Research Service who've been jumping in and answering your questions. They're not always front and center, but they're always the ones that are coming to the table and letting people like me and Andrew know what the correct questions are, because they understand the data better than any of us. We're technologists, and it's our job to implement, but the real understanding of the data comes from them. So thanks to them. I want to say it was really exciting to have all of you in person. We've been doing these virtual for I don't know how many years now, since COVID, so it's nice to see people in person. I'm glad to see the enthusiasm. There's a lot of colleagues here from around the Hill today that came to support, so thank you for that. We really appreciate all your interest. We really do read all the feedback. I'm sorry to hear that there's an issue. We'll look into that to make sure that it's easier for you to send us the feedback, because we really do read every piece of feedback, whether you're sending it to us through social media or through the website. Every single piece of feedback that comes through is looked at and taken very seriously. And Andrew didn't talk about this earlier, but way back when we first launched Congress.gov, that initial launch of Congress.gov, the work for it was prioritized by all the feedback that had come to us through the public via Thomas. So this has been consistent for us that we actually do want to hear what you want us to work on, and we do prioritize that into the backlog. So thank you for taking the time to submit your comments. If you talked a question today and you want to also submit it on the comment form, that would be great, because then we have it in writing and we can make sure that we didn't type it incorrectly as we were listening to you talk today. So once again, thanks for your time. We appreciate all of you coming out here today. Thanks to all of you online, and we look forward to doing this again next year. Have a great afternoon.